Town ground out a 1-0 win against Cardiff City on Wednesday night to move out of the bottom three of the Championship table. Alongside me to review a positive night of football at Kenilworth Road, if not the most entertaining, is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe. Jimbo, we wanted more entertainment. We didn't get it, but we'll gladly sacrifice it for 3 points.
Not me, mate. I just wanted the 3 points.
And 3 points it was. We'll reflect on that good win and look ahead to what it could mean for the bigger picture after this intro.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast, which is shortlisted for the Best Football League podcast in this year's Football Content Awards. This season we are sponsored by Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I mentioned before the intro, we are reflecting on Luton Town 1, Cardiff City 0, and I've got Jimbo alongside me as always. It's another game, Jimbo, that's not going to live long in the memory because it largely, or certainly for 45 minutes, it was just a snooze fest. But when we look back on how all of these points are totaled up at the end of the season, they could be 3 very important points.
Yeah, indeed. I called for tedious a couple of podcasts back, and
they've doubled down on that.
I'm getting what I asked for, didn't I? But, I mean, if Luton turn into a second half team, that'll do me. The first half was pretty turgid. I don't think it was quite as bad as the West Brom one because both teams were shocking there. I think Coventry slightly had the upper hand, but they just didn't.
Cardiff.
I keep calling them Coventry.
You do keep calling them Coventry. It's because they wore sky blue. They tried to get into our heads by wearing sky blue. They only got into Jimbo's head, thankfully.
Yeah, definitely got in my head. All right, Cardiff, they didn't really threaten, not only in the first half, but pretty much the whole game, apart from one speculative shot and a loopy header, and that was about it. So that in itself was a positive, isn't it? But I was trying to find other things to do in that first half because there weren't a lot of aesthetically pleasing things going on.
No, there wasn't. But it's this is the Championship, isn't it? Everyone keeps on sort of saying that they want Luton to look good and performances to be great and this, that and the other. It's a dog of a league. Everyone lauds the Championship. But then when you look at why they talk so highly about the Championship, they talk about it because it's competitive. Don't talk about it from a quality aspect at all. And Cardiff were unbeaten against a quarter of the division going into last night. And they could still be here now unless that pot shot from the halfway line went in. They weren't scoring a goal. And some of that's down to us. And whilst the game was boring, that's probably the wrong term, but whilst the game was unexciting in the first half, it was two sides trying to find each other out, but we managed to do that first, and that's why in the second half we dominated the game. And if we'd won the game 2 or 3-0, I don't think they could have had any. Well, they probably would have had some complaints if they're complaining about the referee, but they couldn't really have had any complaints.
No, I don't think so. There was one obvious one at the end of the first half, which should have at least had Carlton on the spot. But no, they didn't really threaten. They had, straight after Jacob's goal, they tried it from the halfway line, and to be fair, they got it on target. And had Kaminski half scampering across the line, but you do well to beat a man like Kaminski from that distance. And Mate, he of the 4 goals for Reading fame in that 5-0 drubbing in that Championship Great Escape season. He managed to loop a header up, which was good effort, to be fair, but it was never really going in, and just made sure. And they kept them really quiet other than that. El Ghazi, a couple of shots in the first half, I think, didn't it? And, for all their... They played the slightly prettier football in the first half. But they didn't really get any advantages from it, which is good. I think that, it's not going to turn so quickly that Luton are all conquering straight away. But you've got to make some signs to go towards that way. And they did. They kept the team out, the informed team in the Championship over the previous 6 games where they hadn't been beaten. So, it's a funny old league, and but I'm relatively happy with the outcome of that game.
Yeah, like I say, it's not a game that's going to live long in the memory, but it's a game that's important in terms of 3 points. As I said before the intro, it gets us out of the bottom 3. We're looking upwards now. Stupid league this. We're 7 points off the playoffs, and we've just literally just come out of the bottom 3 in the division. It's crazy. We say it all the time, but there's going to be a lot of 1-0 wins. Well, we hope there's going to be a lot of 1-0 wins this season. It's just the league. Ultimately, we're watching second-tier football. We're watching knackered footballers play second-tier football because this schedule is utterly stupid. It's just a grind. You just got to grind it out better than the opposition on that particular afternoon. You haven't got to look the best in the Championship. There is no Burnley of 2 seasons ago, the Fulham of 3 seasons ago in the Championship this season. You just got to look at the results. Both Millwall have beaten both Burnley and Leeds, the supposed best 2 in the league. Millwall looked absolutely pony when we went down there. Sunderland came here leaders of the Championship, looked bang ordinary at our place. West Brom were the previous leaders. I mean, they stunk the place out. Still not convinced we didn't make Sheffield United look better than what they are. There's nothing. You literally just got to outgrind whoever's in front of you on that afternoon as many times as you possibly can, and hope that you do it more times than the rest of them.
Well, exactly that. I mean, we all were quite happy with a hatful of 1-0s on the way up to the Premier League, weren't we? And I'm more than happy with that. Grind it out, keep them out very comfortably. Some really good performances, and stuff that can happen off the bench now. I was really happy with the outcome of that. It's not going to live long in the memory, but they don't all have to.
2 changes. Obviously, we knew one was definitely happening with Alfred Doughty coming back in. I mean, you didn't have to have any footballing intelligence, which is handy for us to work out that Alfred Doughty was walking straight back into the side. The surprising change was Jacob Brown for Elijah Adebayo. Saw a lot of sort of, not criticism of it on social media, but questioning it. Well, 58 minutes into the game, we got the answer to that one. He scores, Jacob. It's almost like a reward for scoring these days, isn't it? You score and then 2 minutes later you trot off to the bench and someone else comes on in your place. But that was a bit of a surprise though, wasn't it? Jacob Brown playing for Elijah. But I think I saw in the realms of somewhere that Elijah was ill somewhere on the lines, and also he needs a rest anyway. He's played every single game, even when we suggested he maybe wouldn't have done. So it's only so much you've got left in your petrol tank in there. And this felt like when you look at it in the cold light of day, it felt like a good time to rest him actually, because you didn't really need to press Cardiff as strongly as what we usually do, because a lot of the time that their defenders they got it as far away from their goal as they could, as quickly as they could. So he'd have just been running around like a bit of a headless chook, really.
Yeah, I mean, he looked a bit knackered in a previous game and he got withdrawn, didn't he? And that's right, he was ill and didn't train on Monday. So when you've got a player like Jacob Brown who looked good every time he's come off the bench, that's the options that we wanted. The options we didn't have maybe a month ago. And so that I was comfortable with that. I think it was the right decision, because one thing you will do, they're different players in a lot of aspects, but not in their relentless ability of pressing. So you're not losing out on that, even though you say you didn't really get much of an opportunity to do that against Cardiff. But that's one thing you'll get from both of them, is a shift. And actually, when Brown did reasonably well, scored the goal, fantastic header that. And for once, Luton got a Luton player got completely left alone in the penalty box to head that. It's usually the other way around. It has been quite a few times. And when he went off, which was actually going to happen anyway, Edwards was preparing it. When Elijah came on, some absolutely sensational centre forward play, just to ease any fears, ease any pressures. Went on a few runs, held the ball up, took a few fouls. Really intelligent stuff from Elijah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Do you know what? As tough a watch as the game was at times, when you think back to previous podcasts and what we've asked for, and not so much Jimbo asking for tedium, but the managing leads and everything else. That's what we done last night, and it was great to see. And do you know what? It might work in our favour on Saturday that these two games have been boring, because they've really only been 2 lots of 45 minutes. So effectively, we've only really played 90 minutes this week, as opposed to the 2 games before Coventry where we were balls out for 100 minutes both times. These have, I mean, obviously I'm not performing it, but these have felt like much more comfortable. Strolls are the wrong word, but they've not got through the energy reserves that they needed to get through for the Watford and Sunderland games, not even close to it.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, I've questioned Edwards twice this week in press conferences about 3 game weeks and what you're going to do about them. And he said, he said Luton fans would kill him if they dropped the relentlessness. But I mean, he slightly did in the first half, but we got the result in the second half because they upped it a bit. But I think that is important. It was right to do that against Watford. Of course it was. And it was never going to be anything other than that. Sunderland were the league leaders when they came here. And it's a case of, as it is for all league leaders, you want to knock them off the perch a little bit and show them who you are. But then they totally got it wrong for the Coventry game. So now it's a bit of learning. And you're right. There's only been really 2 halves of football, decent football. So you go to Middlesbrough, and you've got the option to change things around now. And he has said there will be changes. However many that be, I don't know. We'll discuss that in the preview podcast. But that feels like he's learnt from that. Regardless of what the outcome will be. But already got 4 points from this week, which is good. But I think as long as you don't go to Middlesbrough and go 2-0 up and lose 3-2 again, and you set a good, you go down there and play really well. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, we've seen, but you don't want a repeat of that outcome. But I think that they've managed it so far this week so well. So I think that it gives you a lot more confidence that they can go up to Middlesbrough and get something.
Yeah, still didn't use 5 subs, but you didn't as I say, you didn't really need to use 5 subs last night, because for 45 minutes it was just a casual training ground exercise in terms of intensity, wasn't it? It probably wasn't even that, actually. Luton will train with a lot more intensity than that first 45, well, not 45, maybe 30 minutes of football. It picked up towards half time. They should actually have scored fairly early, shouldn't they, from a corner? El Ghazi, I mean, pretty much a mirror image of the goal that we scored, but El Ghazi puts his header wide when he should have scored. But from that moment onwards, once we'd found out how to deal with him and stop the ball going into him all the time, they tried to use Ruben Colwill, didn't they? I mean, you couldn't miss him. He shone like a Belisha beacon with that blonde haircut of his. One
thing about that is that when they sort of gained the upper hand to a small marginal degree in the first half, Ruben Colwill was bullying Jordan Clark, which is the sort of thing you'd like to see change. I don't know how it could have been any other way with the lineup that they chose, and obviously I know people how they're feeling about Clark's performances this season, but it was just moments in the middle of the park. None of them really ever came to anything, but it was a bit like David and Goliath in the middle of the park there.
Yeah, it was. But we kind of got to grips with all of that. Most importantly, when Colwill had the ball, there was no one really for him to give it to, because we had everyone else matched up. Mark McGuinness had Callum Robinson wrapped up all night long. We finally got Mengi to sort out El Ghazi. The 2 wingers were shackled by our 2 fullbacks. And Amari Bell was just a Rolls Royce all night, really. And then you had Krause chasing anything that moved. And probably some things that didn't move as well, to be fair to him. We should have scored, shouldn't we? 5 minutes before half time. Absolute golden chance. Amari Bell's ball in is inch perfect for Carlton Morris. You only had to look at his face afterwards to know how frustrated he was that he didn't score. Headed it straight over the crossbar. He'd have expected to have scored that. I expected him to score that. I couldn't believe that it missed, actually.
It could have been a lot more comfortable, that game, couldn't it? With a penalty, with that chance that he's had, and Maybe a couple of others where they broke away. You know, Elijah's many things. He's not massively quick though, is he? So when he got through and there were 3 players chasing him, his only option was there to really sort of hold it up. But that is good in the sense that he was doing that because it takes any momentum away from them. They never had any anyway, but you just got to snuff it out. So, there was a few chances to get it. Would have made things comfortable, but at the end of the day, we're quite happy with the 3 points.
You weren't sitting there hyperventilating, were you, that they were about to score or anything like that? I mean, as I say, but for the shot from the halfway line, and he probably scores that every day in training. If Horvath's in goal, then they weren't going to score, were they?
It was. I'm not going to lie. It was in the back of my mind that they'd come up with something completely out of the blue in the last few minutes. Particularly when it's like 6 minutes were added on, then Alfie went down, so it was going to be more, and you're just thinking you want this game to end because it's been relatively comfortable. The back in your mind, and this is just what these results that have gone this season will do, and maybe even last season probably, you're thinking there's a sting in the tail here, but I'm glad there wasn't.
Yeah, I did say to Sarah when the 6 minutes went up, oh Christ, I've just remembered that they were 1-0 down going into injury time at the weekend and 1-1. And she was like, well, thanks for telling me that. It's like, oh, yeah, well, I've got to share it. I can't keep it to myself. But even in them 6 minutes could have been 6 hours. They weren't scoring in that injury time. I mentioned that they should have put basketball courts down at the Kenilworth end. We may as well paint them at the Oak Road end as well now, because this is starting to take the piss. This is the most obvious of the 3. I think everyone would appreciate that. Beautiful set piece from Alfie. It's the set piece that Luton do every single time. So surely we've got to be getting to a stage now where even referees are starting to scout set pieces from the opposition, because you've got to be where the ball is going to land. There's no point in him being elsewhere. Everyone knows it's going to Morris, right? Seemingly apart from the opposition, because he's always free at the back stick.
Mm-hmm.
Morris heads it across. One of Brown or Mengi has got a tap in, but Callum Chambers doesn't know what's behind him, panics, and basically punches the ball into the Oak Road stand. The referee has to be in a position where he can see that. The free kick is looped over. It's not like it's ploughed in at 100 mile an hour or anything like that. The movement is so obvious where it's coming from. You just have to be in a position where you can see that handball. That is literally your job, is to follow the flight of the ball and see that it's handball. But even if you couldn't see it, I don't think you can necessarily react or referee on player reaction. But players don't react that strongly if they don't feel that there's an injustice. And to come away from that incident with just a Morris booking, who's now 1 yellow card away from a suspension, is just an absolute joke, because it's clear as day. Now, we don't want VAR in the Championship. I don't think anyone really wants VAR in the Championship. But the fourth official, the linesman, someone has to be able to see that, because it's so obvious.
We expect the liner to see it because he's there trying to check for offsides and stuff, and he's seen along the line. Yeah, I mean, on the yellow card situation with Morris, it's so annoying you can't even appeal those.
Do you know what? If I'm the referee, right, he must know by now that he's had a stinker of a decision there. He'll have seen it at half time. These things happen. They all get replayed. I saw it at half time, so and I wasn't particularly looking for it. It just popped up on my social media. Of course, the referee's not going to be on social media, but replays are going on televisions all across the ground. He'll have seen it. Just rescind the yellow card. Don't put the yellow card through or something like that. Just say, look, I've cocked up. Scrap that, because you have to. The yellow card is only actually an official yellow card once you filed it in your report at the end of the game. Just don't do it. Just look, I've made a cock up. Explain the situation to everyone involved, and don't put it through, because Morris has now taken 2 yellow cards for questioning decisions that are obvious that have gone against him, and he's also captain, so he's well within his rights to question it. I didn't see anything last night that suggested that he went over the top in his questioning. He wasn't happy. Well, hey, look around you. Neither were 10,000 people. But, I referenced for the Coventry one that it seemed on TV that he mouthed towards the line, though, that he was a shithouse. I didn't see anything like that. Yeah, he's landed himself with a yellow card.
I hate any measure that tries to stamp out emotion from the game. You've already got people getting booked for taking their shirts off when they score. You know what I mean? That's mental. And
I mean, ultimately, if you want to stamp out dissent, start getting some fucking decisions right. That'll stamp it out.
yeah, exactly that. But yeah, the whole team appealed for it. It's not like one or two who was near. The only TV replay that I saw wasn't very conclusive to start with. So I went into the halftime break thinking, oh, it's just hit his hand and maybe that's why he's not giving it. But then everybody on the Luton media team were looking at the screen by the time I got downstairs into the press room, and they were like, no, that's Stonewaller. And then I saw the clip when I came back up to the press box, clear as day, that he's sort of pushed it away, palmed it away, really, isn't he? And
yeah, Sky don't do it justice, do they? Because it's something like the third or fourth camera shot in amongst the replay set that really shows it. But the referee has to be at a point where he can follow the path of the ball at all times. So if you've got a set piece coming over like that, surely you'd be better off to be nearer the goal line than the penalty box line, because it's not like the set piece isn't going to get to the penalty box, is it? I mean, it has to be an absolute shank for Alfie, 10 yards outside the penalty box, not to put it in the penalty box. Yet when you look at the referee, he's on the corner of the penalty box. Why? That's not where the ball is going to go.
it's a very, very good point, actually, that probably doesn't really get talked about. Why are they standing there? Wouldn't it be better to be almost on the byline or just off the pitch looking at the play to see what's going on? That seems to make more sense. Listen, at the end of the day, it hasn't cost Luton in points. It might cost Morris a suspension quicker than he would have liked, which is annoying. But all you can do really then is that when that happens is go out and play as well as they did in the second half. So that was a good riposte to it. But we've seen it go not so well this season, and there's the frustration.
Yeah, listen, I don't expect a referee. I say this a lot on this podcast. I don't expect a referee to get every decision right. I don't. There's he probably gives 100 decisions in a game. 85, 90 of them are piddly little ones in the middle of the pitch that if he gets right or gets wrong, you're going to have ample time to defend afterwards. The big decisions, though, so from set pieces, you've got to be in a position whereby you can see all of the play. Now, if that means that you have to go behind the goal to see all of the play, or to the corner flag to see all of the play, or wherever it is, surely if you say to the linesman, you cover that side of the goal and I'll cover this side of the goal, between the two of you, someone must see something. But it didn't happen. But what it did do, it riled up the crowd, and the crowd needed a bit of riling up because it was dead. And understandably so. There was nothing to get behind, really, apart from that Morris header in the first half. But it got the crowd going, and then the second half, there was a bit more tempo right away. Obviously, the referee, when he went in, got booed, probably got called a shithouse from the crowd quite a few times.
He got, I was watching Edwards as he walked off, and he was giving the ref daggers and shaking his head quite significantly about what he'd just seen and not got, because... obviously it was a penalty.
To be fair, he's probably getting pissed off at every team coming down here and playing basketball. But that's 3 on the trot now, and it's, as I say, that was the most obvious of the 3 of them. If the referee would put himself in this is a geezer who refereed our game against Fulham at home last season in the Premier League. This isn't a waif and stray that's just come up from non-league or anything like that. This is supposedly one of the higher echelon referees in the country. Okay, I know in the Premier League he's got VAR to assist him, but he must have got there by being able to give obvious decisions like that. Well,
this one wasn't nailed on Stonewaller. The previous one, even though you're not having it, it wasn't a penalty.
It absolutely was a penalty. Second half though, no changes at halftime. Not from us. They made a change. Not from us. That probably felt right, because I thought the last 15 minutes of the first half, we were getting on top in the game. As I say, we had the Morris chance. We had a couple of sort of moments where we could have got in, but Kraus overhit one pass, didn't he, to Chong? I mean, that Kraus pass ended up somewhere in Ash Road, I think. Chong also overhit a pass to Alfie that it just couldn't quite, it wasn't quite flowing. But
Yeah, yeah.
But it was going.
That's one thing.
You could see the signs of where they were trying to get to, but it just wasn't getting all put together.
Well, they're trying to get directly up to the pitch. We've spoken about this before. Get into those areas and then play your football. But if you're a connoisseur of overhit passes and balls bouncing off shins and knees, and that first half was for you.
Well, that's unlike Kraus as well, isn't it? Because his passing range is usually very, very good. We couldn't get Hashi in on that right, and that diagonal ball, they've obviously scouted that because they had that covered all the time. I mean, to be fair, 2 or 3 times Clark played it. It went straight to the keeper anyway. But even when McGuinness was playing it, usually he's very good at getting to Hashi. That the left back had that all sorted. So we couldn't really get going. But to be fair to Rob, they've sorted it out in the second half. We've played much more football in the second half before the substitutions started to come along. But certainly after the substitutions come along, I mean, Shandon Baptiste, I mean, he's given a 30-minute cameo there of absolute techers, really. It's just some of the skills he's got, some of the comfort on the ball is just great to see. Please, please, please stay fit, man. Please.
Yeah, and play more. I mean, I said we need to talk about Shandon in the previous podcast, and he's just emphasised what I was talking about there. Just the one player that looks like that when the ball's at his feet, it's staying at his feet. Just wonderful balance and poise to go past players. The first touch is very good, which is important, as we saw in the Premier League. It's those fine margins that make the top players. And yeah, I mean, he's just not had many matches, many appearances in his career to prove that. But I think he is showing this now in the last couple of games, and I thought he was good before he got his injury as well. Rob was always talking about him in the summer, saying how good he was, and I think we're starting to see the fruits of that. Hopefully, yeah, he can stay injury free. But for me, when he does get up to speed, and I think he's probably done enough to maybe start at Middlesbrough. We'll come to that in the next podcast. But once he gets his chance, I fully back him to take it. And I think he's a first choice midfielder when that happens. But as good as Elijah was with his centre forward play, as Shandon did against West Brom, just kept things moving, kept things ticking. Some of it really understated. There was a couple of moves in that I think is where we're directing all of our stargazing, but just sort of every sort of all the basic aspects wonderful, and then he's got something else, something extra that I think is going to really benefit. And
it's really interesting, isn't it? Because all of these other appearances have been in that deeper midfield role or as a 2. Last night, obviously, it was a 3, and he played because he come on for Chong, he played the further attacking role. So sort of the link between Kraus and the strikers in that area, that sort of area of the pitch. I mean, if we played 3-4-2-1, obviously we didn't. We played a front 2, but were we to play that 3-4-2-1, he'd have been one of the 2. That's the kind of position that he was taking up. The position that sort of Clark played an awful lot of last season. And yeah, it really worked. They misplaced a lot of passes in the second half, which really helped us. He read the play. He was sliding balls through that Elijah was inches away from getting on a couple of them. I think Morris had one as well. He almost played Hashi through. In fact, I think he did play Hashi through, didn't he? But the cross, nothing came of it. Really, it's really good to have a midfielder who can cover all of the midfield roles, because Marvellous is you're not going to get a forward role out of Marvellous, are you? He's got that deep role covered. You're not going to get a sort of, well,
I saw a preview where they said Marvellous was a box-to-box midfielder, and I was like,
the box is very small, isn't it?
Not sure about that, but no. Shandon is.
Yeah,
and
he's what they call an 8 these days, isn't he?
Yeah, but he can do it all from what I've seen so far, and I mentioned that he's the man to fill some of the void that Ross Barkley left, and there's nothing that he did against Cardiff that makes me think anything other than that, because he's quality.
He really is. Yep. And within minutes of him coming on, we've taken the lead. Nothing to do with Baptiste, as it turns out. Alfie's corner, absolute peach. Just over Hashi's head. It was similar to the one that Hashi hit the post with the other night, wasn't it? Just over Hashi's head. Brown's lost his man completely. Free header, sticks it in the top bins off the crossbar. They always look better when they go in off the crossbar as well, don't they? He's not going to win Strictly Come Dancing once he's finished his footballing career, but off he goes to celebrate. And
I have to show my age because Sky Sports put out the video of that clip of the goal and said, "Come for the goal and stay for the griddy." And I had to ask younger people and go, "What's a griddy?" And they're like, looked at me like I was like I just insulted their mothers or something. Like, it's a dance move. I was like, "Is it?" I have no idea, but I do know now. So thank you.
every day's a school day, even at a football match. And then a couple of minutes later, he's off and Elijah comes on. And like you say, I mean, it was one of those, we never needed a second goal. I mean, obviously, they've nearly scored from the halfway line from the kickoff, haven't they? I don't know why they even tried that, because it wasn't like Kaminsky was on the edge of his box or anything. He might have been daydreaming, but he was still in his goal, wasn't he? He was never going to score from there. As I say, he might have scored plenty in training like that, but sometimes when they look up and they see the goalkeeper on the edge of the box or whatever, they think, go on then, but he wasn't on the edge of his box.
Well, they weren't getting anywhere near Luton's penalty area, really, so why not?
It was an admission that the ideas had long since disappeared, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes think if, obviously Luton were on top at the point that the goal was scored, and they must have recognised that, and they weren't getting any change out of the defence, which is a good thing from Luton's perspective. So why not try something like that? Why not? Most of the time it's not going to come off, is it? But the one time it does, you're going to be remembered for a very long time. Yeah,
true. It's not like that goal hasn't had one from the halfway line in it before, is it? So thankfully it didn't have last night, though. The way we saw the game out was really encouraging from a what you've got to do in this league point of view. 2 or 3 players went down and got the physio on with cramps or whatever it was. To be fair,
in inverted commas, I reckon some of them cramps.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
I mean, to be fair, we're going to be under a lot more cosh in games to come than what we were last night, but it's decent enough to practice it even so, wasn't it? And then like you say with Elijah, how many times did he carry the ball out of our half and just head down and run until someone either fouled him, got a tackle in to put the ball out for a throw in. I mean, no one was with him. They were all like, "Go on, and Elijah, off you go. We'll just wait until you get something at the other end of the pitch." But it was great because it killed time, wasted a bit more of their energy, gave us a bit of time to sort of soak up some of our energy and make sure that we were good to go. Because ultimately, we've still got Amari and Tedden on the pitch who are playing 180 minutes. Nowhere near fully fit. Well, Tedden's certainly nowhere near fully fit. Amari doesn't look out of place, but he never does he?
They really did look very good defensively, and that is something that we haven't been able to say very often. And obviously, Jacob Brown gets the goal, and we're purring over things that Shandon's done and Adebayo's done. But for them to be that solid, I think is a really good platform.
Yeah, agreed. Marvellous came on just to shore it up a little bit later as well. He came on for Kraus, who probably had run himself into cramp by this point because he was here, there and everywhere. Your man of the match, not my man of the match, but not taking anything away from him. He was
there was a couple
very, very good. Amari Bell was just...
There's a couple that could have had it. I think Bell, very good. Hashi was quite good.
McGuinness.
I gave it to Kraus because he was just here, there and everywhere. There wasn't a lot to be choosing from the first half, really, but
well, you weren't picking on quality, were you? Because you're picking on work rate and endeavour, but there was a lot of it, and it's not always been the case this season. So fair play to. The only downside came in injury time when Alfie seems like he's picked up some sort of ankle injury. One stage the stretcher came for. He took one look at that and said, "You can clear off with that. I'll hobble off if I have to." And then he's hobbled. Then the next thing you know, he's hobbled up the touchline. We've used all of our substitution opportunities by this point, as I'm glad Rob did. There's a lot of people saying, "Well, why didn't you save a opportunity. Well, it was in injury time. I'd much rather we use our subs, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts, and as what would they call it, Murphy's Law. We needed a substitution window when we didn't have one. But you looked like we were going to finish the game with 10 men. We've already got Elijah to track back to play the sort of left wing back role, and Clark's gone back to play the right wing back role, and the defence have all gone across one. And then out of nowhere, Alfie's hobbling up the touchline, and then all of a sudden he hobbles on the pitch, and then he's gone up front, and it's like, I mean, to be fair, I'd have fancied my chances in a foot race against the boy, but if anyone wants to question how much it means to them, the fact that he just wanted to go back on tells everything.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, but I haven't got any problems with it. I think some people are questioning, and it's a fair enough question, but I think that if the player wants to go back on, and the physio has also looked him over and he's happy for him to go back on, then I think you've got to leave it up to them to be grown up enough to make that decision. Now, if it is a problem and it leaves him out for a couple of games, then I think you maybe have to look at it and question it. And I hope not. My fingers are crossed. I've got no inside info on this. I did ask Edwards about the incident, and I've already put the story up online, but so you can go read that, Lutonian.com.
I mean, as long as he can't make it worse by coming back on, then, you know, it's only 2 or 3 minutes. If it's something that, you know, one more sort of jarring or stretch or something, snap something or something, none of us know what it was. I mean, we're all assuming he just twisted his ankle. As long as there's nothing worse to come from it, then fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, my hope, and maybe I've watched one too many Netflix dramas, is that was all a big old hoo-ha just to wind the clock down a little bit, even though, I mean, you know, it gets added on, but it breaks up momentum, doesn't it? If they were going to have anything, and I was, like I say, I was fearing that there was going to be that last gasp sting. I'd be delighted if Dowie's name is on the team sheet, because he offers so much in attacking sense, and he's just come back, so he's had his rest. He doesn't need another rest. But my hope is that there was a bit of play acting in there. I hope the worst case scenario will be that he's done himself a mischief by, you know, playing on a bit more. Although he wasn't going anywhere, he wasn't moving anywhere. He was still sort of hobbling around in a 6-yard sort of square, wasn't he? But, you know, fair play to him. I think, isn't that sort of thing fans like, you know, soldiering on for the cause and that sort of thing? It used to be par for the course in the old days, you know. Terry Butcher, head bleeding, wrap it up, get on with it, son.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, as long as he's not made it worse, the alternative is that he stays on the sidelines, and that frees up a Cardiff player to go up into the penalty box, and they're only going to be launching balls into our box at this point. At least by having Alfie there, even if he can only move at 50%, he's got to keep that fella back, because they're not just going to leave him free as a bird for us to belt the ball away and let him walk in and score, are they? So he kept a player out of our penalty box, and for a team that still doesn't completely convince when defending its own penalty box, that's never a bad thing. We did last night. We were really good. Every single member of that back three was absolutely spot on it. And do you know what? Maybe part of the reason why they've not been spot on it this season is because they've never been the same back three for 2 games in a row, seemingly. You know, we've not had Bell for so long. Then when we get Bell, we don't have Mengi for so long. And then successive games playing the same back three. And you could kind of tell that they were more... There was only one header last night where both Mengi and McGuinness both went for it. And it was on the halfway line. It was a ineffective sort of part of the pitch. The rest of the time, they all knew where they were and it looked settled. Maybe it's just that run of games that they've not all had together that they need to settle in.
Balance as well. I mean, that you're talking about Amari being fantastic, and he is. And he's Mr. Reliable, but he's become such a good centre-half since he moved to the left-hand side, and obviously gives that flexibility. And then, like in the West Brom game where they went to a 4, he can offer you that as well. So, you know, until he had his injuries, he had a couple, but only a couple. He pretty much played all the time, didn't he? So it was only when he went to that Gold Cup shenanigans and got injured, and he's had a couple of niggly ones. But other than that, if you can get back to what he was before that, in terms of like being able to like churn it out again and again and again, it just does offer a lot more for Luton. He's great as a good defender. He's got good pace, but he can come out, bring the ball out, link up the midfield and the defence, and it's a good asset to have.
Yep, should have had an assist on the night as well, as we mentioned earlier with Morris's header in the first half too. Great to have him back. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so an encouraging night overall. Yeah, was it the greatest spectacle ever known to man? No, it wasn't. Spoiler alert, in a 46-game championship season, you're not even going to get into double figures for great games. You're just not. We was in it 4 years before we got promoted to the Premier League. Probably weren't 10 great games in the 4 years combined, really. There's a lot of... You just have to scrap it out.
There isn't great games of football all the time. I talk about this so many times. I don't know if I might have said it on the podcast before, but there's so much nothingness in football, so much dross nothingness. That's why, like, that's why certain people in like FIFA and UEFA occasionally float ideas that, we've got to make it 60-minute games now to attract the younger generation because their attention span isn't very good. America constantly makes jokes about football, don't they? It was a Simpsons joke about how nothing happens in football. And that's what nothing happens in football most of the time. That's why, American football racks up the tens of points and basketball, tens of points, getting towards 100 because they're constantly scoring. It just becomes nothing. Ugh. I know you like those NFL, but I'm not, digging you out there. I'm just making a point. But most games of football are very low scoring, close games of football, and not a lot happens. So if you're not in favour of that, I've got news for you. That's football. It makes, when something good happens, it makes it better, because you've got to appreciate, you can only appreciate the great when you've had to sit through the mediocre and the terrible.
Exactly that. I mean, you look back to the promotion winning season, that QPR away win was about as good as it got in terms of scoreline, that 3-0. And, we pinged in 2 shitbangers in that game. Otherwise, that's probably a 1-0 as well, The other games that people remember from that season were Watford, which was 2-0, but the 94th minute was the second goal. And of course, the playoff semi-final, which is completely different because that's a cup tie. There's so many awkward, awful, tough to watch games in the Championship. And I go back to what I said earlier in the podcast. It's because we're watching second tier footballers at second string because the schedule is just too ridiculous. And that's how it is.
And that's okay, by the way. I mean, if you want to change football because you don't like that, maybe it's not the sport for you. There's so much other stuff that happens during a football match that maybe not. Sometimes it's not on the pitch, sometimes it's at the game. If you're at the game, if you're sat in your living room, I can understand why you might get bored. But I don't know, doom scroll through Insta or whatever you do normally and get on with it. But football is not 100% about the game all the time for me. There's other stuff that happens in football that makes it wonderful. The culture around it, the banter, everything. Sometimes when it is so terrible and, your fans are singing about how it's terrible and stuff like that because it's like gallows humor and that sort of stuff. That's awesome. I love that stuff. You're not going to get incredible action all the time. And the only reason you probably think this is because of the Sky propaganda machine that's churned this out for 30 years that's what's going to happen. Other people take the mick about it. There's a sketch from David Mitchell, the comedian, where he's walking up, he's doing a sort of Sky package. They're going, here's the greatest game of football until the next one, that sort of thing. And that's funny because it's true. And, you've got to be on board with it. You've got to love it all, the bad and the good.
Yeah. I mean, the more Sky hype a game of football up, the worse it tends to be. I mean, they've hyped up some absolute shockers.
Well, hell, they saw fit to come to Kenilworth Road for the last Friday for that West Brom and Luton one, and they must have been thinking, what the hell have we done here in that first 45 minutes? But, that's life.
And these aren't just Luton games that are like this. We're recording this whilst West Brom are playing Burnley, but of the 11 games that have been completed so far in this round of games, only 3 of them have had more than 2 goals in them. They're not goal fests. They're horrible grinds on dank, dark, nasty nights. And I mean, as misty as anything, wasn't it? It was just it was a night for football, but not a night for aesthetically pleasing football. But the positive was we didn't have one of those stupid bloody light shows that Millwall fans certainly made perfectly clear what they think of their ones.
Well, so did you lot when it happened at Kenilworth Road.
You're right.
But, I don't know what that is about, but that's not for me. That's the Americanization of association.
You want flashing
football
lights,
for
go
me.
to a disco, Jimbo.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
It's not for me, that. Yeah.
No, nor me.
Once and never enough, and I think the Millwall and the Luton fans,
About the only time we've ever agreed, isn't it?
have made their feelings known on that scenario. But I mean, it is second tier football. If everybody had top quality, they wouldn't be playing in the second tier. They'd be playing in the top flight. What it is most people are very good athletes, not quite as good as the top flight. So it's a battle and a slog sometimes in the Championship, but that's okay. It takes all sorts of football, but I do like the Championship.
Yep, you're going to get probably too many more games like that than we'd like to remember in the coming weeks and months. But hopefully we get some good ones mixed in and around there. At least, whatever happens, we've got that win over Watford to remember this season by. But the main thing was we ground out the win. And that's 2 games unbeaten now. That gives us a platform to build on. And hopefully we can go further up the table in the coming weeks. The next 4 games do look tricky with 3 of them away from home. But, they're all going to be relatively scrappy, pretty much like that one, I suspect. Let's hear from a few people involved in the camp. Jimbo caught up with the manager, Rob Edwards, after the game. And here's what he had to say about his team's win.
I think we played well, but you could see that, Cardiff are playing well at the moment. They've got a good rhythm, a confidence, a belief there, obviously the run that they've been on, and some very good players as well. I think after the first 15 minutes or so where we were a little bit, just didn't quite arrive quick enough in some of the pressing. After that, we got to grips with it. We were more aggressive. We won it back a lot. And I think the game was where we wanted it to be. They might have the ball a little bit, but we've got to try and keep it as far away from our goal as possible, which we did. And I think then we did have, certainly had the majority of the momentum, and the game was where we wanted it to take place. So I think we deserved the win. But it was a night where it was important, of course. The first goal was really important. We should have had a penalty. I don't complain very often, if at all, but that's 2 home games in a row. I feel we should have had penalties. We didn't get it. I know it's difficult to see those things. They happen quickly, but that certainly would have helped us. Potentially would have. But to come in at, we talked about it at half time. Actually, it was tonight could be about fine margins now, lads. With the games, it's obviously not completely one sided. I felt like we were the more dominant team where the game was, but clearly they had a threat and they were still dangerous. The game was in the balance, so tonight was going to be about fine margins and coming out on the right side of that. Really pleased for Jacob.
Yep, that was a fair assessment of things from Rob, and he got plenty right on the night, as he did against West Brom. So, full credit to him. He's clearly learning from what happened in that first 3-game week, and, long may that continue. Jimbo also caught up with Mark McGuinness, who has always had a good week, hasn't he? 2 really good performances against West Brom and against Cardiff. And news broke today that he's in the Ireland squad to put Harry Kane in his pocket at Wembley next weekend. So congratulations to Mark for that. And here's what he had to say to Jimbo after the game.
I think it's really important for us. Obviously, we've had some good performances at home, but maybe not got the result. So I think it's important for everyone to feel like we can get performances and results here. We've been playing well here. It's a place where we feel like we can, the crowd gets with us, and teams coming here feel intimidated. So we want to keep that. I think that's really important moving forward in the season. So today was a really good test. It was a tight game throughout. It was just important for us to stay switched on, focused, and lock up at the back. Yeah, I think that's the next step for us now. I think, the game can be in the balance at 1-0. I feel like we've got the quality, and just being that bit more ruthless, putting games to bed 2-3-0. And then I think everyone can be a bit more comfortable watching.
Yeah, good to hear from the Town centre-back there. He's really starting to look the player that, well, I'm assuming that we expected that we signed.
Yeah, he is. And I wonder how much that injury was an issue. It wasn't all that, settling into a side as well. And obviously, when you make that mistake against QPR that he did on your home debut, it would take some sort of recovering. But, like you mentioned earlier in this podcast, there's not really been the similar lineup all the time for him to get used to. And at times, as little as a couple of weeks ago, he was having to lead a central defence with two fullbacks either side of him. So, but he did that well. He's played well the last, for the 4 games now that Luton have played well at home. So has he. So that's good. And he did. You didn't hear in that package, but he did talk about how he loves playing at the Kenny now, and I think that's all sort of coming together. Really, it took a while, didn't it? But it took a while for Tom Lockyer, and look what happened with Tom Lockyer, and the way he's revered now. So just shows you that things can change, can it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, certainly. Since that, well, I don't know what Ireland put into his injury but since he's come back a different player, hasn't he? And long may that continue. If you want to put whatever it is into him when he goes away next time, so that he comes back just as good, that would be mighty, mighty handy. Anything else to sort of flag up from the game?
Yeah, been green shoots of recovery from the team, and I think more than anything that clean sheet last night against Cardiff is it's a big statement, I think, from the defence that now might be able to have something of a settled lineup with maybe a bit of squad rotation here or there where it's not forced on them because of injuries. We've been saying that for so long. In fact, we've been saying it since February, really, haven't we? There was maybe a week or two period, a month back, where we thought things might be changing. But we just haven't had that for such a long time. And I think we've been saying that if they had those options available, maybe we'd still be in the Premier League for starters. But certainly when they're all back, then it should sort of start to settle down a bit now. As well as the midfielders. Shandon Baptiste's coming back. Marvellous Lakamba coming back and sitting in front of the defence to stop it there. The work rate is such, and the high press when it works is so effective that it takes a lot for other teams to get through Luton when they do it right. And so to keep the informed team in the Championship out so comfortably is, it's pretty much shoulder to shoulder there with the goal that gets the game, really. I think that obviously the goal, you need that to win the game, 3 points, but the defence is the basis for it. So I think that's a real positive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 2 strong defensive performances in succession. Players coming back, a much fitter squad, a much better, much healthier squad. I mean, hell, you look at who was left on that bench last night. Victor Moses was left on the bench. Liam Walsh was left on the bench. Peli Kampanzu. I mean, we're even in a situation where we're leaving players who are fit off of that bench now, and that's exactly the area that we wanted to be in. And now obviously we go to Middlesbrough with a much fresher squad, with options to change, and who knows, and no one's saying that that's going to be an easy game. That's a hard game whether you're at peak physical force or whether you're weak. Middlesbrough are always one of the tougher trips in the division, but that's not to say that we can't go there and get something out of it. And we'll preview that, of course, in about 5 minutes, actually, because there ain't much turnaround time to that game. Speaking of which, thank you to everyone who continued to subscribe to the podcast. They're going to come thick and fast at you, well, certainly for the next few days at the very least. And then again, straight after the international break, we've got another one of these Saturdays. So if you don't want to miss any of the podcasts, do subscribe and you'll get a notification when each of them drop. And yeah, certainly for this one and the next one, they're going to come hot on the heels of each other. Congratulations to Nick White and Luton G-Man Rock, who both correctly predicted that Luton would beat Cardiff City 1-0. There were lots and lots and lots of Luton win predictions, including us two. We've both got a point. That damned referee has done me out of 2-0.
I've always liked that referee.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise if you slipped him a round envelope at half time or something, actually, just to maintain your lead. But I'm still there, still knocking on the door. But yeah, well done to you two. 1-0, you're absolutely spot on with that prediction. And obviously, we will get a graphic sorted out that we can put a leaderboard up. But these podcasts and games and everything else are coming too fast for us to work out which graphic we want to use right now, aren't they? So we'll do it during the international break.
Yeah, I've been fiddling about with things, but just haven't had the time really. So
if they can stop playing football, we'll be all right, wouldn't they? Maybe if Saturday's first half is that crap, we can just devise it whilst it's going on.
Just do it then.
Yeah. I certainly won't be doing it on the way to Middlesbrough because I'll be what is known in the trade as asleep. Well, that is for sure. Thanks for all the comments. We really do appreciate them. We try and action them as much as we can. We've probably not got around to all of them this week, but that's literally because the podcasts have come thick and fast. But the ones that we see, we certainly do our best to action them. So please do keep those coming, and we'll try and get some reaction from inside the camp during the international break, and we'll let you know as and when that takes place. That is pretty much it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks, as always, to the Barber Club and the Lower Level in Luton for hosting our studio, to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Until next time, which will be a preview of the ridiculously long Saturday lunchtime trip to Middlesbrough from Jimbo and myself. Come on, you Hatters.
For me, it's the people and the spirit of the people as well.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul. We're Luton people.